introduction, and Tracy, and also organizing this event. I've been really excited, both myself and Brenda. So I also want to say a big good morning to everyone. I know most of you are hidden, but I know you are, listening to us. So I really appreciate your time. What both Brenda and myself and Tracy really want to get out for you today is I have 5 things in my mind. Firstly, I would love to give you a little bit of context, which is give you a bit of background about who we are, so you are familiar with us. Second, I would love to, focus a lot more about the opportunity that is available in Australia, give you a context about Australian job opportunities, why the opportunities has come about in Australia, what are some of the clients that we work with, so you get a good context about that. Then, I would also love to spend a little bit of time on our process. What are some of the things that we do that has been able to help others in a similar journey as you have been on. At that point, I'm going to get Brenda to really and delve a little bit deeper into the immigration framework of Australia. And as you can appreciate with COVID, it's been a really interesting space there. And what does the future look like, particularly heading towards 2022? And finally, I also want to share with you some of the frequently asked questions that we get. Obviously, since we've started, we've had lots of people come over here, and we've got a real live experience that we'd like to share with you. At the end, I also want to be able to provide you with any of the questions that you specifically have. Hopefully, we'll be able to address them for you as well. Does that sort of work, Tracy, for the call?
Yes, thanks, Amit. That's fine. So on the questions, if you want to just write them in the chat so that I can coordinate them. Yep. Okay.
Awesome. And what I think we're going to do is I'm not going to kill you with a PowerPoint presentation, but what I'm going to try and do is have a conversation with you. So firstly, thank you for that kind introduction, Tracy, about myself. So this company, Global Talent Agency, we're very proud partners of Pro Talent, and so the company was founded off a vision. As Tracy mentioned, I'm an immigrant to Australia myself. I came here as a young lad, 25 years ago almost, in this great country. And I was very fortunate in having a career in HR. So I came to a point where I wanted to do something more meaningful and help others who have aspiration to be future Australians and come to this country. And so that's how this company is formed. The company is a purpose-led. So for me, for us, and that we work in Global Talent Agency, it's much more than a job. What you'll find is working with us, it's not a transaction like you normally have with a recruiter. It's actually a relationship that you will build with us over time, because this process, I've had experience. Example, I've dealt with someone 6 months ago, then they come back after 6 months, because making a move internationally is a huge deal. There are lots of unknown questions. There are lots of things that you'll have. So we are here to work with you. So in summary, Global Talent Agency, we are a boutique international recruitment firm. We also happen to specialize in allied health. So many of you here, if you're allied health workers, you've come to the right place. And one of the reasons, and it's quite interesting, we actually launched the business right in the middle of COVID. So the business was launched on the 2nd of July, but fast forward 12 months, now coming to 15 months, we've got over 15 staff spread across a number of different locations and real strategic partners, and obviously Pro Talent being a partner in South Africa. So we're very proud with and one of the reasons why we've had the success that we have is, I think, there's been an actual, what the offering that we have is quite a unique in the Australian context. Firstly, it's unique in the sense that within the Global Talent Agency family, we've got the migration agency. So we are an agency that can deliver end-to-end service to a individual talent like yourself. From the time we have a conversation with you, we really guide you through your registration process, whatever that may be, either you're a physio, occupational therapist, whatever the case may be, we'll help you with that. Then we'll actually ensure we find you a great opportunity. We coach you through the process, because as much as many of you South Africans, your skills are well respected, well regarded in Australia, our cultures are similar, but it's not the same. And what we do is really prepare you for that, differences. And then comes immigration. So we take a very long-term approach. We've got Brenda, who really becomes your case manager, your business partner, your counselor in that process. Once your visa has been granted, again, we sort of catch you to ensure you're onboarded here. We've got a travel agent that's ready to help you, get you to Australia. We help you with even finding you apartments where we can. So as you can see, it's quite a comprehensive process. And that is one of the reasons why most of our clients actually work with us. Yeah. Because they know that we have a comprehensive process. It's not just about finding a job, then leave you by yourself on your own means to find your way. And we understand what it takes, because as Tracy mentioned, myself and most of us that we work in our business have been through this journey ourselves. So we understand what it takes for this to be a success. So that's probably one of our unique value proposition you find in the marketplace. Look, in terms of the clients and opportunities that we have, we actually work with some amazing clients across Australia. And I actually have a criteria that when we bring a client on board, I test them to make sure they are great Australian businesses. Okay. And you may ask what makes them great. It's a simple definition that I have. I've got a four lens that I use to make sure they're great Australian business. One, the clients that we work with will pay you well based on your salary, but also what the Australian market data pays you. This is not a scam that we run. You from South Africa, someone will pay you $20,000 the market. No, what you'll get paid is what the Australian market pays, and that's upfront. So that's one. Number two is, as I sort of touched on earlier, coming from a country like South Africa, as much as your experience is, your qualification is well recognized here, we appreciate the skill that you have. It's different. So you want to work with an employer that really understands that difference and is set to help you succeed. Because this is where a lot of times we see things go pear-shaped. Okay, so I think it's really important that you need to find an employer that understands that and supports you through the transition. That's the second point. The third one is, 99% of the candidates that we deal with are often looking for Australia as a future home. So they're looking for a permanent residency pathway to, raise your young in Australia. And our clients understand that. So there is a clear, when you work with us, there's an upfront, clear PR pathway. If that's what you're after, we've got that covered for you. Okay. And finally, for anyone to move to a new country, it's a huge ask. So what you want to ensure you do is, you find an employer that's willing to help you grow into Australia, grow into the Australian community, but also into your career. So you want to find an employer that can provide you that growth. So those four things are really, really important when we select. And what I've been able to do is, with my 20 years of HR recruitment experience, is to really build that part of our process. So you'll find our process is quite cumbersome upfront. We get you psychometrically assessed. We have a number of interviews. Tracy has one interview, then you'll have an interview with either myself or one of a team member. One of the reasons for that is we want to make sure when we put you forward, we've understood you. We've understood your aspiration. We've understood your skill. We also understand what the future is going to look like from a cultural values point of view. So that way, when we put you forward, we can work with confidence that you'll be a success. So give you an example, over the last 12 months, in the middle of COVID, we've actually placed over close to now 100 candidates. And our success rate has been phenomenal, simply because of the work that we put you up front, and we're there to support you through the process as well. Okay. So one of the questions that you may ask, what is the reason why there's such a demand in Australia for allied health workers? And that's a fair point. There's a couple of things. One, about 10 years ago in Australia, during a economic growth that Australia went through, Australia created a a national insurance scheme for disability, which is called the NDIS, which is actually replicated on the NHS model from the UK for some of our participants who are listening from the UK. And I think what they've done is they've actually obviously put a lot of money behind that, which is meant, you know, the accessibility to access allied support is available for most Australians, you know, who are in need. That has also meant, you know, there's a huge demand for allied health workers, particularly occupational therapists and speech therapists. And if you think about, you know, supply, there's only very few limited places where the supply is coming at the moment. We see a lot of great talent coming from the UK, Ireland, South Africa, and some parts of Africa as well, from India, Philippines, USA, Canada. So still a very limited number of places where there's a mutual recognition program with Australia, because the Australian Health Authority, the APRA, the regulators are very strict. So from that point of view, so many of you candidates, you know, who are from South Africa, you're actually in a very lucky position that you can tap into this, because for you, there is a clear pathway for you to work through as well. Yeah, so look, what I might do is I might just stop there for a second while you're digesting some of the information that I've just provided you. I might just get Brenda to jump on, Brenda, and just talk a little bit about, you know, the immigration landscape, and I'll sort of come back again and talk about other stuff. Yep.
Of course.
So I'm just going to introduce Brenda. Can I introduce you, Brenda?
Yeah.
Of course, go ahead.
Okay, Brenda is a senior immigration consultant, is one of the rising stars of the migration agency. She's been a delight to work with, and she's worked in the Australian immigration space since 2014. After numerous years working in global immigration firms and professional service firms, Brenda joined the migration agency to be able to focus on the customer and build rapport and help clients achieve their aspirations. So having experienced the immigration process herself, when she migrated to Australia from Kenya, she connected with the migration agency's values to truly support people and their journey. And the nice thing about working with the Global Talent Agency and the Migration Agency is that we're a package. So you don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to have anybody else involved in your journey. We support you, as Amit said, right from the beginning to the end. And most of our clients will be supporting the visa process through the migration agency. So over to you, Brenda, and you can tell everybody more about it.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's really lovely to meet all of you. I think for today, what I'd really like to focus on in the time we've been given is some of the key questions a lot of people have about the employer-sponsored visa, which is what, you know, both Amit and Tracy are working with, is to place you with employers who are willing to sponsor you to come to Australia. Now, there are a couple of different pathways available for employers to sponsor you, but the key ones that we work with is the subclass 482 visa, which is a temporary short-skilled visa. Now, how this visa works is it's essentially a collaboration between you and your employer. So there's going to be sections of the application that are done by your employer, who I do work with to go through that, and then the visa application, which I'd be working with you as the candidate to go through. Australian immigration can be quite complex. There are, you know, hundreds of different subclasses, and each of them have their own requirements. But for this 482, what's really important to realize is that there's those two occupation lists, which a lot of people may be aware of. So there's the short-term list, which is always the first question people ask me, is my occupation on the short-term list? Luckily for occupational therapists and physiotherapists who are on this call, your occupation is on what's called the medium to long-term list. Why is that important? It means that not only are you able to apply for a visa, you know, an inordinate number of times, so you're not limited to the number of times you can apply for the temporary visa. It also means there's a pathway to permanent residency for you through employer sponsorship. Now, there's two different pathways to employer sponsorship. I saw a question about permanent residency in the chat box, which I'll get to shortly. But there's essentially two different pathways. So the first is called the temporary residence transition stream, and it requires you to work for your employer for 3 years while holding a 482 visa in order to be able to access that pathway. but a lot of people are interested in what's called the direct entry pathway. With the direct entry pathway, there's no amount of time that you have to work with your employer before they're able to support you for that visa. In fact, you can apply for that visa outside Australia. The difference is the processing time. And I think what's key to Global Talent Agency's process is they want to get you here to Australia, working as quickly as possible, because as Amit has said, there is that niche in the market. Now, if you apply for this 482 visa first, or the temporary visa first, Global Talent Agency is supporting candidates to get that assurance that the business will support you for permanent residency within 2 years, rather than the 3 years required for that temporary residence transition pathway. So there are obviously conditions to be met for you to apply for these two different visas through the employer-sponsored visa pathways. And some of them are things like, your identity. You'd have to show that you've got a valid passport at the bare minimum. You'd also need to be looking at your educational qualifications. So one of the things that we do with Global Talent Agency is before you begin applying for the visa, before you even start doing your registration, before you're outlaying costs towards the immigration process, we would have reviewed your CV and confirmed first and foremost that your qualifications would be recognized here in Australia and therefore through the immigration process, and that you have the required employment experience for the visa. Now, as Cindy has already responded in the chat box, you do need a minimum of 2 years at least of full-time post-qualification, ideally employment experience for the 482 visa, which is the temporary visa. You can count some experience where you've been doing paid internships or internships as part of study towards that skill requirement. We do assess these. So when Global Talent Agency asks you to update your CV, it's likely because we do need that key information just to make sure that you're able to meet the employment and skill requirement for the visa applications. Another thing that lots of people look for is whether they meet the requirements for a 186. So for the permanent residency, there's additional requirements there for, needing a skills assessment, or, for example, needing at least 3 years of employment experience as opposed to 2. So we would be able to advise you once you become our client, whether you'd meet the requirements for the temporary visa, the permanent visa, etc. Now, some key features of the 482 visa. So let's say you've gone through this whole process with, Tracy and Amit, you've completed your interview process, you've received an offer of employment. That's the point at which you'd be introduced to me and we begin the application process together. We would be looking at, getting all your documents together, ensuring that you have registration in place. I'm across the registration requirements for occupational therapists, both through the Australian pathway and through the New Zealand pathway. And I'm more than happy to provide a guide as to how to apply for those once you've been introduced to me and we're doing the applications going forward. But some of the things to keep in mind about this visa is it is tied to, your employer. So a lot of people, you accept the offer and you're halfway through the process and you decide you're not looking to proceed. It's good to understand that, your employer would have started outlaying costs towards the process. And so being sure that you want to actually travel to Australia and live in Australia and, not start incurring costs and then decide to pull out of the process halfway is really important to the process. With the 482 visa, some of the key conditions are, as I said, it's linked to an employer. So you are required to work with your employer, sponsoring employer while holding that visa. There are registration requirements. So things like ensuring that you've got your registration with APRA in place, ideally within 90 days of arriving in Australia, but more ideally before even getting to Australia, because for physiotherapists and occupational therapists, you cannot work without that registration in place. And then simple things such as health insurance and, relocation, those are all things that we can look at later. But more importantly, just understanding that the visa is linked to a sponsoring employer and there are costs associated with going down that pathway. Amit, have I missed anything with the 482 visa or Tracy that you'd like us to chat about? Or are there any questions in the chat box about the 482 visa?
Just about
the 186.
Age, there's somebody asking about age limits, and then just regarding the skills assessment, the documents that you need for the skills assessment.
Amazing. Okay, so age limits, that is a very important question. Thank you very much. So for the 482 visa, there's no age limit to apply for the 482 visa. You could be a 50, 60, 70-year-old, provided you're able to do the role in Australia and you have the skills and experience, then you are able to apply for that visa. However, there is an age limit for applying for permanent residency. So you do need to be under the age of 45 at the time of submitting an application for permanent residency. For the skills assessment, I mean, I can kind of touch base on, I was hoping to touch base on the skill requirement or the registration requirement and the difference between going through New Zealand and going through Australia. I will not be able to give you a document checklist because they're all tailored to the person's individual skills and experience. Document checklists are available on the, for example, the Physio Council's website or the New Zealand Physiotherapy Board's website. And I believe that Global Talent Agency, once you do become a candidate with them, do share fact sheets. And the fact sheets have quick links to all these websites. They give you details on health requirements, character requirements, police clearances that you may need to get. So once you sign up with GTA and you're within their talent pool, they're more than happy to share that information. However, I guess I'll start with occupational therapists, and you can stop me if any questions jump up about occupational therapists. So for occupational therapists getting their registration, there's essentially two key pathways. One is going through New Zealand, which it's a bit more straightforward, but it is more document intensive and time consuming in terms of the processing times. But if you were to apply for occupational therapy registration with the New Zealand board, then you're able to apply for general registration without any conditions in Australia through what's called a Trans-Tasman agreement. So New Zealand has an agreement in place with Australia where if you're registered as an occupational therapist in New Zealand, Australia will recognize it through APRA. The other pathway, which is a bit longer, is going through Australia directly, and it's split into about 3 stages. So the first stage is putting in an application with the Occupational Therapy Council for a desktop assessment. It's a very quick assessment. It's done within about a week. It is possible to have the person notarizing your documents, mailing the documents to Occupational Therapy Council. Quite straightforward. However, the outcome of that is limited registration. Now, in order for you to move from limited to general registration, you do need to go through a supervisory period with your employer. And I know for a fact that Global Talent Agency does have employers who are happy to go through that limited registration and supervisory period with you in order to get you to general registration. So that's another benefit of going with Global Talent Agency. They have those businesses available to you. Now, the difference between limited and general, how long is the limited registration valid for? It can be valid for a period of up to 12 months. And in that time, there are things that you have to meet. There are requirements that you have to meet in order for you to be able to apply for general registration. So I'm just opening up the chat box so that I can tick off any other questions.
Brenda, can you maybe perhaps
Yes.
share your experience with the last 12 months with traveling to Australia on a Phyiso visa, and also what do you foresee like in the new year, so people have some context?
Of course, with respect to traveling to Australia on the 482, I have seen a lot more visa grant letters coming through simply because there's that option of applying for a travel exemption. So permanent residency, we actually did do a Freedom of Information request, Amit, if you remember. We did a Freedom of Information request to the Department of Home Affairs where we asked them for the number of visas granted, permanent residency visas granted over the past 12 months. And they were literally, I believe, 2 applications granted in 12 months for people outside Australia. So in terms of trends, what we're expecting once the borders reopen is an uptake in the number of visas granted for permanent residency for people outside Australia, which they haven't really been processing given the border restrictions. For the 482, I mean, we do expect an increase, a significant increase in the number of people willing to migrate to Australia once the borders do reopen, not just from South Africa, but from UK and from Ireland and the US, simply because of how Australia has managed the COVID pandemic and, you know, some of the positive light that has come out from that. So we've received a couple of people very much interested in moving to Australia once the COVID pandemic has been reduced. Amit, anything to add there?
No, I think that's it. Thanks, Brenda. And maybe
Not a
some other
problem.
questions will come through. What I might just touch base is some of the regular questions that I get from many of the candidates is, one is, what sort of organization that we work with. What I would probably suggest to all of you guys today is, I think this is a really important part of the process. I know moving into a new country, dealing with recruiters offshore, locally, it can be quite daunting. I think do your due diligence. Once you feel comfortable, you've got Tracy on hand in South Africa, give her a call, have a conversation. Because in terms of opportunities that we really have opportunities all across Australia with different types of organization. Too many to name them here for you. So what we'll probably do is really look at your CV, your experience, and understand what you really want. And based on that, we'll be able to, find you something quite quickly. In terms of time frame, realistically, by the time you get a registration this year, and also getting flights into Australia is a bit of a nightmare. And I appreciate Christmas is coming, so we're working for placements in the new year. In the new year, if you want to come to Australia, start 1st of Feb, that's fine. If you want to come to Australia, March, that's fine. If you want to come to Australia in July, that's fine. So we are very happy to work with you with your time frame. But if you've got kids, then I would probably say think about coming to Australia in the in January. So Australian school starts end of Jan, start of So I think you want to come here, and then is what I would probably suggest. So that's one. Second one is, in terms of tax, I get this question a lot. Do you have to pay tax in Australia? Unfortunately, yes. Unlike the Middle East, in Australia, we do have to pay a progressive tax. Lots of information there if you Google or go to the Australian Tax Office. But generally, you will pay somewhere around the 25-30% mark of tax. So that's one. Second question I often get is about healthcare. Healthcare cost, and a lot of people have this perception that Australian healthcare is as expensive as America. Actually, the experience has told us that the private healthcare in Australia is actually cheaper than in South Africa. Okay, so it's very, very affordable. And what you'll also find is the private health that you buy, you get the money refunded in your tax claim in Australia as well. And those sort of details we can talk about it, when you sort of kick off the process as well. But just to reassure you that is there as well. In terms of we also get a lot of candidates saying, hey, I want to apply directly with permanent residency pathway than, rather than the Phyiso to a visa. Look, some candidates do that. Unfortunately, for us and the business, it's really difficult because, as Brenda touched upon earlier, the government has really moved away from giving direct pathway to PR to more to a Phyiso, because they don't want to, I think from a government's point of view, if you get employed, it's a less headache for them. You'll come over here, you'll work over here. But what we assure you is we have a clear permanent residency pathway. Once you're here, do your time, pass your probation period, 2 years time, then you go your permanent residency. So that way, I think employers are also a lot more confident. Good employers particularly are very confident, say, well, you come and prove yourself. We're very happy to honor that. And if that was not to happen, we are here. We will make sure that is taken care of for you as well. So that's one. In terms of time frame, look, realistically, the shortest time frame, if Christina says, hey, I want to be in Australia ASAP, realistically, it'll be about 3 months is the time frame that we work with. But practicality wise, I think let's work on the basis that if you want to get to Australia, have a mind frame that you'll be in Australia in the new year. I think getting a flight to Australia has been a nightmare. So I think, and also trying to get the registration. Some of the challenges we've actually seen is even getting the documents in South Africa has been a nightmare. Your police report, your university documents. So I think just to be safe, you will be working on that basis. But that also means that in terms of our interview process, we're quite active. So if you're ready, if you're even thinking you want to come to Australia in July next year, that's fine. Get in touch with Tracy, have a conversation with her, so she has a full brief of you. then we'll put you forward to our client. We'll put you through our process, then we'll put you for an interview. Yeah, we'll get you that job offer secured. Once the job offer is secured, Brenda will be in touch with you to start your visa process. So as you can see, like, and it's a seamless process that we'll be able to provide you. So it's a, you know, and look, I mean, and that's how we've been working, and it's worked. And even in the middle of COVID, I think we've been able to bring over 50 plus people in Australia. So, you know, the proof is there for us, and we're pretty confident in the process that we follow. Okay. In terms of the other questions, you know, salary, I think is a big question. How much do you get in Australia? Look, I think in Australia, I'm just going to be very general here. Someone with a 3 years experience, you can expect to get around $75,000. With someone with 10 years experience, up to about $100,000. So that seems to be the range for occupational therapy or a physiotherapist, just depending on there. Okay, so it's a bit of a wide range, but that's a range you get there. In Australia, you also get what you call a mandatory pension contribution from the employer, which is also called superannuation. So you get 10% of your employee directly contributed to a fund, and that gets saved over there, that you can access once you retire at 65. But if you're someone, you know, you come to Australia for 5 years, and for whatever personal reason you decide to leave Australia, go back to where you come from, and you don't have a, you know, citizenship with Australia, and you know, you can actually claim back your money and take that away with you as well. Okay, for your benefit, that's there. Otherwise, it will be there. It sort of gets reinvested, and hopefully, you know, at 65, you'll have a few $1 million to enjoy your retirement as well. So that's the other question I often get is, you know, on the childcare. A lot of candidates say, look, I've got young kids. Do we get childcare subsidy? Unfortunately, if you're on a 482 visa, childcare, there's no childcare subsidy for you. But often, a lot of candidates think that if you have a PR, you get childcare subsidy, and that's also not correct. What happens is when you're a PR, like myself, I'm an Australian citizen, I've got a child, I've still got to pay childcare. What I do get is daily, I get a discount or a rebate from the government, which is actually, it's expensive business in Australia, childcare, but the rebate is minor. So as a citizen of Australia, I think I get about $20 of rebate out of $130 or something a day. So just for you to be mindful of. The other service that we take a great pride in is, I'm particularly passionate about ensuring, you know, we've understood your whole family situation as a whole. So what that means is, like, you know, often our candidates, their husbands are, you know, accountants and finance people, or engineers. We try and help them as well. Yeah, part of the process, I want to ensure we've had a conversation with both of you and your partner, and we try and help both of you. So that way, you know, example, if your partner is a mining engineer, there's no point there, you know, us trying finding a job in the middle of Sydney. We'll try and find you into a role where you both can find meaningful work. That's really important. On the other hand, if your partner is a finance guy, works in a corporate banking, then I'll probably say come and work in Melbourne and Sydney. And look, I've got lots of contacts here. If we can't find through Global Talent Agency, we've got partner agency that will help you as well. So we try and solve, you as a whole family unit as much as we can. Okay, so that's something for you to be aware of as well. The other question we also get frequently is on school fees. If you've got kids going to primary school, secondary school, with the 482 visa, unfortunately, you do have to pay a fee while you're on that to go to a public school in Australia. So it's somewhere around the $7,000 per child per year fee you have to pay here. Okay, so it's not totally free. If you're a permanent resident and citizen of Australia, public schooling system is free, but if you're not, you have to pay for it. That's just something for you to be mindful also about. Yeah, look, those are the...
Just regarding the payment, there's one question amidst, and Brenda, just from Andrew, is the process sponsored by the employer, or do I have to use my own funds? So there's two parts to the process. One is the job application process, which we recruitment agencies, we don't charge anything. And the employer does sponsor parts of it. Brenda and Amit might want to allude to that.
Yeah. I'll jump and I might get Brenda to also speak. So thank you, Cindy. So a couple of things to just be clear about. We take pride of the fact that we as a recruitment agents, global talent agency, we don't actually charge anything to the candidate directly ourselves, okay? And we also negotiate and work with the employers to ensure, they understand the full scope of that. So what that means is, actually all of our clients that we've worked in the last 15 months, they have supported the PR application for the candidate, okay? So they will pay for the professional fee that Brenda and the team charge, but also your application fee, the department charges, where you will have to pay your own fees for your partner, your kids, the actual application fee, which I think is reasonable as well. And Brenda, do you want to add to that? Yeah.
Yes. So as Amit said, most businesses will cover that cost. So if you're a single applicant, it's unlikely that you're going to have to pay for any portion of the immigration costs. You will have to pay things like your registration or your English language tests or health examinations. But from an immigration perspective, most employers are covering that off, which is why I alluded earlier to, at the point where you start having conversations with the migration agency, your employer has already started incurring costs for us to support you with that process. And with the 482 visa, so Amit has already said the only time you'll be required to pay any fees is if you've got any spouse or children included in that application. Yep. So I'm sure GTA team will be issuing, if they're issuing contracts of employment or payback agreements, they clearly outline what your obligations would be if you agree to go forward with the process as well. I did see a quick question that somebody has asked about pre-registration. Just quickly that, do you have to have registration before arranging for interviews? Amit, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, I think it's a question from Amrita. Hi, Amrita. Look, it depends. It depends on not to have a conversation. So you can have send your CV to Sydney, Tracy, and Tracy will have a chat and understand where you come from, where you've studied, because we need to assess whether there's a mutual recognition program with your qualification. If it's straightforward, yes, there's a mutual recognition that Brenda and the team have justified, then we don't have to. We will have the interview with you. We'll make sure you're right. Then we'll put you forward for an interview with the client. But in some cases, what we find is from certain countries, example, if you from South Africa, it's a pretty straightforward case. But I'm just assuming you could be from anywhere, right? So, example, if you're from India. In India, some universities have a mutual recognition program with Australian qualification framework, others don't have. So that's the part we need to ascertain. And there's also language requirements and what have you. So in that case, what we do is we'll have a conversation, we understand, we assess you properly. And at that point, we make a decision whether to put you forward then, or we say, hey, why don't you go and get your OTC registration, the first phase one, and then we'll move forward, just to give certainty to all parties as well. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
I'll just add one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that much as you can interview and receive an offer without registration, we generally don't move to submitting an application up until that's sorted out. So if you can get that sorted, it'll shorten the process for you and enable you to migrate faster than if we're starting the process at the time you're placed.
Yeah, there's a question here from Nikki. Does anyone does one have to do any test exams prior to getting to Australia? So Nikki, it really depends. So example, if you come from UK, the chances of you doing any exams and tests is 0. If you come from South Africa, it also depends. So example, if your primary language was Afrikaans, in your study mode, then you'll have to sit for an English language test. But if you've actually gone through the English as a primary language, then you may not have to. So it just depends. So there's a bit of a towing and froing, our team will ensure it's right for you. So it's really hard to make an assessment upfront. But if you're from example, if you're Hi, Patricia. Yeah. So example, if you're from India, we know upfront, you will have to sit for an English language test. Yeah. So that's how it works. Yeah,
And
that's a
then there's
really
the
good
fund
question.
issue. There was a question regarding funds. So you will have
I'm
to
just,
take your own air ticket. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, Tracy, look, coming to Australia, Australia is a fairly expensive country, right? And moving to a new country, you will need to have some funds. So some of the funds that will require, example, Iola, I'm assuming that you could be a single young person. You know, in your case, you need to have initial funds to do your initial registration. If you're occupational therapy, through the occupational therapy, that's one. Then you, as Tracy mentioned, you need to have funds to buy an airline ticket. And that's the second one. Third one is when you arrive in Australia, you need to have a couple of $1,000s, like, you know, just as a safety, you're coming to a new country. Yeah. So those are the things I'd probably say. Other than that, look, the rest is covered. So your visa's covered. You know, you'll probably start getting paid as soon as you get here and start working. Yeah, but it's always safe to have a little bit of money when you come over here. Yeah.
And it's been very comforting knowing that some employers will give you the money up front on arrival. Do you want to tell them more about that? Some employers are very generous.
Yeah, that's right. Look, some employers are also willing to provide you a relocation allowance support when you get here. Like, you know, there's some employers do that. The other employers are willing to give you upfront part of your own money. You know, almost give you in advance. So when you arrive in Australia, you've got, you know, $10,000 to pay for your rent. So that can also happen. We can work with it depending on a personal situation where you are and also the employer. So it just depends. But from a safety point of view, it's always good to have a little bit of fun if you're going through this process. Yeah. Because nothing worse, you know, you're about to come to Australia, but you can't get a flight because you don't have the funds. You can't do that. Yeah. Because there's a lot of things at stake, and by the time you buy the ticket, the employer's already spent close to about $10,000 to $20,000 to get you here. It's a huge investment on the employer part. So I think there's a part that you need to also commit to as well. Yep.
Good. So thanks very much, everyone. Are there any pressing questions that anybody wants to ask? Just ask them in the box quickly, because then we can end off.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very thankful. A lot of information has been imparted. As Brenda alluded to, we do have fact sheets. Brenda's put some very good ones together, and she keeps on updating to send to me. So I think if you're starting off, the initial thing is to be in contact. I will be in contact with you after this interview. Let's chat. Let's understand your needs, understand where you're at, and let's aim for a realistic time frame. And we've got all information on the registration. And then the next thing would be, Amit is busy finding jobs for you behind the scenes. So I will then hand you over to him when we know where you're at and what sort of your time frame and what part of the process you're in. Because we don't want to waste this time initially with all those things, and I can help you with all of that. So then we hand you over to Amit, who then looks at your whole package and as you said, your family needs, and then looks to provide you with a job. Now, we don't want to place you, and some of you will be aware that a lot of Australian immigration says we're going to go and place you in the outback in the middle of nowhere. No, we're not looking to do that. We're looking to place you. A lot of our OTs and physios that have gone this year have gone to cities, Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, and Perth. So we actually haven't placed one, I don't think, Amit's in the middle of nowhere. So be confident that we have your needs at heart, and we were a one-stop shop, and we're very grateful to be involved in each other's businesses. And we're here for you. So keep in contact, and thank you.
That's right, Tracy. Just actually, Lizette, did we answer your question? Just want to make sure we've covered your question. Can you unmute it?
I don't think so, but I'll speak to Tracy about that. So it's fine.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, please do have a specific chat with Tracy. I think I understand what you're saying, but yeah. And the question you may have is, do you have a short out to accommodation? Yeah, okay. This is a really good question from Sabon. Yeah, look, what we will do is, you know, one of the value add of working with us is, as I said earlier, we provide you end-to-end support. What that also means is, like, you know, we have a pretty comprehensive onboarding guide for you. And also we've got team members here who else, if you go and look at my LinkedIn, Actually someone just arrived a couple of days ago and she put a beautiful message, like, and she was really worried finding a place, and we helped her find a place over here. So we'll help you with that as well. But having said that, these days, these things are a lot more easier, because with online, you can easily do it, but we're here to help you and guide you. Okay. The last thing we want to do is you rock up over here and you get into the situation. Yeah, you can be assured. What I would suggest you is, you've had this conversation, you've heard about what we do. Take the first step, have a conversation with Tracy, and you'll find we have a process that cover you every step of the way, all the way. We've thought about it. We'll walk you through. We'll help you through that process. Okay.
Yeah. And we're confident, and that's why we're so privileged to be part of this group. And I think the world is opening up for you guys. You're very privileged to be in an occupation where the world needs you. So, enjoy it, explore for short term or long term. And, just talking about the person that just arrived, she's got a quarantine for 2 weeks. So that's been the challenge of most of our OTs that have left to go this year, and physios. And so she got a pack. She was so excited. She got a pack from the Global Talent Agency, all little goodies and things to help her on her way, and has been receiving calls as well. Because, it's very daunting to arrive in a country and then stuck in a hotel room for 2 weeks. So, we hope that we can provide a service that is from beginning to end, and after, not really an end, because we join you in your journey, your career journey. So thanks very much for joining, everybody. Is there anything else? And then I'm going to end it. Anything else? Thanks, Brenda, for your time. I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
That's all right, Tracy. Since we've still got a few more minutes, one thing I do want to share, is, you may be thinking, what are these Australian employees really looking for, right? And me, as someone who deals with the clients every day, I keep asking this question: what are you looking for in a candidate, right? And you'll find this interesting. Every single client ask for the same thing, and they're looking for 5 things. And if you're taking a note or what have you for a future reference, these are the things they're looking for. One, they're looking for people with a flexible, open mindset, people who have a growth mindset. Okay. And it's really, really important, particularly you're moving into a new country. Whilst you've got some amazing experience, you have a lot to give, come with an open mind. Australia is going to be different. And if you come with the open mind, I think you'll find this country has a lot to offer. So that's one. Second one is every single client is looking for someone with integrity. Okay. What does that mean? Of course, it goes without saying, someone who's got trust, what have you, but it also means that you need to be self-accountable. Yeah. I think that's really, really important in this process. You got to be accountable for yourself. You got to show a level of accountability, I think, and that's really, really important in this process. Even when you're dealing with us, be honest about it. Like if you've got, because what we find ourselves is you're going to 5 different recruiters and the clients are the same, and the clients get annoyed. Right. So you pick one, be transparent, be honest with us. If you that way we can actually help you. Yeah. You can give us any feedback you have. We're always here to listen to you. We'll do the right thing by you, but that's our expectation, that you'll do the right thing by us as well. That's the second point, integrity. The third one is Australian employers are also looking for intelligent people. Okay. And when I say intelligent people, we're not talking about rocket scientists, people who are lateral thinkers, people who are problem solvers, people who are curious about what the problem is. And that's really, really important to really adjust into your workplace. We're not looking for people saying, yep, I've done this for 20 years. I know what to do, and come and bring that. No, come here with an open mind and solve a problem together. I think that's what the employees are looking for. So that's the third thing. Fourth one is employees are also looking for people who are really passionate about what they do. Most of you, if you are allied health workers here, this is much more than a job. Yeah, this is your calling. This is a purpose. So I think it's really important that you come across and you talk from your heart. And I think if you do that, the Australian employers will really, appreciate that. And the last one is this is not a scheme where you come here 3 months here, 2 weeks over there, 4 weeks over here. No, what Australian employers are looking for is to provide you a long-term opportunity, growth, all the things I talked about earlier. In return, they're expecting you to at least commit to them for 3 to 5 years, hopefully longer. Yeah. So that's the 5 commitment they will seek from you, because this is a pretty exhaustive process to get you here. But in return, like, you do need to think about those things. And if you have that as part of your preparation from here on, and you can share that with your husband, your family, your wife as well, and get that, I think if you can think from that point of view, it's going to really work out really well for you as well. Okay. And one last one, Tracy, sorry, I keep having all these questions coming. One is people often ask me, oh, if I come to Australia, can I go back to South Africa on a holiday? This is one I get. Just for your benefit, in Australia, you get a mandatory annual leave benefit of 4 weeks every year, paid leave. Okay. It doesn't really matter whether you work for a company in Darwin or Sydney or Perth, Melbourne. It doesn't really matter. The government has mandated. So every full-time employee in Australia gets 4 weeks of paid leave, and that's accumulative. What that means is this year you may not want to go to South Africa, but next year you'll have 8 weeks and you want to take all those 8 weeks to go and have an African safari, go for it. Okay. So that's something for you to understand, annual leave. In Australia, you also get roughly about 13 days public holidays leave. So those are also paid leave. Third one is in Australia, you also get personal leave, which is sick leave. So every year you get 10 days, it accumulates. So for 10 years, actually in my previous employer, I worked with them for 10 years. I had 2 days sick leave. So I lost my 98 days. All right. So it's for those rainy days. So, and that's available for you as well. And last one is one of the benefits of working with the employer for about 10 years is you get what is called a long service leave. So if you work for an employer for 10 years, you get roughly about 9 weeks of paid long service leave as well. So these are the benefits for you to think about as well. Okay. Look, I think I've sort of exhausted my question that's coming to my mind. Is there any other questions anyone have on the call?
I think we're done.
Looks like
okay, well,
we're done.
We're not running away. We're here to answer your calls and to have another further chat with you individually. So get in touch with us and I will be in touch with you all as well. Thank you, Brenda. Thanks, Amit, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for giving your time to come and listen to us. Hopefully, hopefully you'll get in touch with Tracy and we'll probably meet in a couple of weeks' time and have a conversation. So I look forward to meeting each one of you. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys. Enjoy the evening. Okay, bye.
See you guys. Have a good one. Thank you.